Building your first Lemons car can be intimidating, especially if you watch some of these YouTube videos and seeing the fabrication skills that go into some of these Lemons builds. We have literal professional race, SpaceX, OEM manufacturing engineers running in this series, but this time on Lemons World, we're going to take a look at a team that isn't that.
The team we're talking about is Big Sky Backroad Burners and their 1981 Fox body Mustang. Literally built in a backyard out of spare parts.
Now, this car was already in the family. It was owned by the team captain's grandmother who daily drove it in the 90s. It was a base model 4-cylinder version. After it was retired from commuting, it made its way into the family field, where then a friend of the team captain, Terrence, who later wound up on the Lemons team, went and stole the 2.3 4-banger for his Ford Ranger.
Now, when you hear that, it probably won't shock you to learn that that was not the only car out in the family field. So when they decided, hey, maybe we should go Lemons racing, they would just wander out to the field and look around and say, don't know.
And of course, they did settle on preparing the Mustang for Lemons, which generally is a good choice. Parts are cheap, parts are available, and there's limitless and probably wrong information on the internet on how it all bolts together. Now, once they started building this car for Lemons, and they asked Terrence, hey, can we get that motor back? Terrence came with a resounding no. As for the fact that this particular Mustang didn't have a motor, well, there's still the yard of cars.
So they just decided to go to the field supermarket and stock up on stuff. They wound up with a 351 Windsor out of an 85 Econoline van, a quadrajet carburetor from a 68 Buick. I think they got a radiator out of an LTD. They had electric fans from a Dodge Intrepid. I mean, it's great to be able to do this. And at the race, one of our judges put it, oh man, that's one of those fancy Duraspark ignitions. And they were like, it is?
The 351 V8 is paired to an M5OD 5-speed manual out of a 92 F-150. There are a few minor issues with the transmission. One, compared to a regular Mustang transmission, the F-150 one is physically huge, requiring them to cut a large chunk of firewall and transmission tunnel out of the Mustang to make it fit. And two, the shifter location is slightly different from stock.
And they also had such field-worthy finds as an 8.8 rear end. They got the front spindles and 5-lug conversion from a Lincoln Mark 7. Awesome car. They got springs, control arms for a Mercury Zephyr. I want to see this field. I'm just saying. The wheels, which we made fun of in a recent HPR video as saying something like, well, clearly not from a Mustang. Turns out they're used in aluminum. That's all they know.
Getting all of this stuff loosely screwed together in car form in time for the Lemons race really came down to the wire. They had to factor in a 12-hour drive across 3 states, so the team cut short their testing time. As a result, before the race, they had never driven the car faster than 40 miles an hour, and they also realized that the hill they were using at home to load the car on and off of their super tall trailer did not exist at the track, so when they tried to unload at the race, they immediately ripped the exhaust off.
But that's all right. You know, JB Weld and a welder and some random O'Reilly's donuts for the exhaust. All of that works just fine. They were able to get their literal Ford Lincoln Mercury suspension out of the track, and as soon as they got over 40 for the first time, they realized it didn't work at all.
Another thing that didn't quite work was the hydraulic clutch conversion that came with the transmission swap. It had these zip-tied fluid lines that ultimately ran too close to the engine block and melted. That sidelined the team for another lengthy repair session.
So it was not a podium finish, but you know, we don't expect that from first-time teams that are building cars out of fields, and first-time teams building cars out of fields, that's what Lemons is all about. They learned a lot about wrenching. They learned a lot about, what not to do on a racetrack. They learned a lot about suspension tune-up. They learned a lot about each other, whether they like that or not. So we have had professional Le Mans fabrication teams. That's not me. That's not you. This is them. They're going to come back, and you know what? They're going to do better.